Oh no, don't be scared. I'm not gonna hurt you. Are you alone here?
I'm waiting for a friend. We should be here soon.
You should never be alone. I'll keep you safe.
Who are you?
I know what you are. I know where you came from. Would you like to see?
Yeah.
Like a boss.
Live from the USA, helping you get paid every day. This is the boss of Bitcoin, the Cristo of crypto. It's your boy BK. And if you don't like me, you must not like money. Thank you for joining me, everybody. Today, I have a little bit of an educational series. I don't think it's anything that I've talked about on any of my videos. So it's going to be a deep dive into eclectic knowledge gained, throughout the duration of my studies, of how the world really works. So I hope you enjoy it. We aren't talking about the price of Bitcoin. I'm not showing one chart on Bitcoin in this episode. This is merely, as I mentioned, an eclectic source of knowledge to obtain from all around the internet. What we have unfolding in front of us is indeed, a testament to the time that we're in. Earlier today, it was announced that the United States would venture onto the path of creating a digital dollar, right? That's very, very big. If you follow, what Bitcoin has done to the world, essentially it has digitized the process of obtaining financial freedom. And so now, the US has assimilated into that same theology. However, you should know that the dollar is not your friend. It is designed as an instrument of debt. If you are familiar with the Bible, the borrower is always the slave, right? And this is something that we'll talk about in detail, like this symbolism, right? Because, just as water is blue, these puppets oftentimes use symbols in their public presentations of such matters to really convey the message that they're saying behind the scenes. And all too often, the general census, the population, remains ignorant to such said symbols, and they fly over their head like they never happened, right? And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. What is that symbol right there, right? That eagle and the snake. It don't even look like a snake right there. So a lot of people wouldn't even pick up on that. But essentially, we will be discussing, a bit of religion, a bit of theology, a bit of psychology, and a bit of economics, as government and macro fiscal policy is concerned. So brace yourself. That's why I introduced this video with Mowgli and the scene of Ka, right? There you go. In ancient Egypt, the supposed spiritual part of an individual human being or God, which survived with the soul after death and could reside in a statue of the person. So spirit, right? Spirit, energy, soul, right? And so that's essentially what that snake represented. The spiritual part of the human being that survived the soul after death and could reside outside yourself, right? And she asked that boy, do you want to see? Do you want sight? Do you want knowledge? You want to know how this world works, or do you want to remain ignorant to your own environment? And what did he say? He said, yes. And that's where it started, right? That's basically the story of that scene in the jungle. Little do most people know that when you take the image that is commonly depicted of evil, you know, from the Bible, from the biblical reference, right? The apple, Adam and Eve. That is also a symbol for the Taurus field. If you cut an apple open, the shape, which also is indicative of the shape of your heart, is eerily similar to that of a Taurus field, right? This is essentially the magnetic field that runs around the world and every object, essentially, connecting everything to everything else. You do have platonic solids built in there, and different ways of interpreting it that also correspond to some of the smallest fragments of our reality. So basically, from the smallest to the largest, you have represented inside of that little apple. This is also eerily reminiscent to the repeated nature of a reptile, right? Reptile skin. All too often looks like this one little piece right here, repeated and repeated and repeated. Oh, by the way, when you break down the word reptile, you get repetition of tiles, fractals, infinite repetition of the same source, same self, right? And so again, we have energy, we have cosmology, we have magnetism, we have everything we talked about on this channel, but we're just literally getting started. On top of that staff that this character is wearing is an eagle, right? So we're going to break this thing down like a fraction. Like I said, get ready. You know, I feel like the big homie on this one, Mr. Savon Bomar, doing a 3-hour, dissertation, but we going to break this down like a fraction for you guys. On top is the eagle, right? Where does that come from? Well, when you look it up, it actually started with Aquila, depending on your pronunciation of the word. Doesn't that look a lot like aqua, A-Q-U-A, which is what? Water. We'll get back to that in a minute. But down here, they talk about the different symbols used. That's one of them. The eagle on top of the reef, on top of the globe. In addition to that, I think we can click back. It was widely used and accepted in Germany, during the early 1900s, This shouldn't be a surprise if you know your history, but the war eagle was quite popular during that time. And this is indeed what our characters are wearing on their clothing as they talk about introducing a new currency, a new energy onto the world, right? That is where it comes from Rome to Germany to the United States. Nobody's the wiser. Moving down on this symbol, we also see the staff, right? The caduceus, the snakes, dueling snakes, twirling snakes. This has been interpreted many, many times over many, many civilizations, and so I'll touch on a few of them. The first one is reminiscent of Vedic cosmology and the 7 chakras. essentially aligning to your DNA, again, speaking to the energy that is radiated through you onto the universe, right? 7 chakras in your body, 7 twirls of that snake, all the way from the crown chakra to the root chakra. If you want to learn more about it, just type it into Big Brother, and this will be one of the first links that come up. Chakra, Chakra, right? And again, you have Ra, which is sun, and you have Ka, which is spirit, all inside that word, right? And so this is basically, you know, the different energy portals that are aligned in your body, right? This is one of the oldest studies. So there you go. And so essentially those different hoops in the snakes is reminiscent of the 7 chakras in your body. But have you ever wondered why the dollar sign is an S, basically with 2 bars running through it, right? Anybody ever wonder that? I did, so I looked it up. The S is a symbol of the snake. Very, very, very easy, right? And so when this lady goes to introduce a new currency of the world, you better believe they're talking about the snake. All right, guys, and I would be doing everybody a great injustice if I did not discuss, at least for a brief moment, the empire currently known as Egypt. This is, I think, the pinnacle of when the snake was revered and adorned for with regards to great civilizations. And we'll jump into that real quick right here. Also, if you haven't done it yet, make sure you subscribe. Like I said, turn your notifications on if you appreciate this content. As you see, I'm going in depth to give you some knowledge that is not often talked about, you know, not only on YouTube, but more so in the crypto space. So if you like this content, just hit that thumbs up, you know, for a player one time. So here we go. Egypt, back in the day, used to be known as Kemet, Kemet, right? Ancient Egyptian region or religion. Sorry, Kemeticism was the ancient Egyptian religion. Also, one should note that this is actually where we get chemistry, right? It came out of Kemet. And so remember, we're talking about manipulating the metaphysical properties of our world to induce an expected outcome. This is what alchemy was. This is what we currently know as chemistry out of Kemet. Little known fact, Osiris and Isis were the 2 big gods that were derived out of that region. Osiris being green, Isis, you know, in her hawk form. This is how we currently depict them today. And actually, this is where Kermit comes from. This is why he was green. This is why he was wise. He always had wisdom.
And now for another Muppet Thought of the Week. Dreams are how we figure out where we want to go. Life is how we get there. I'm headed this way. My mistake. It's this way.
And he was always had morals. He was always doing the right thing because he came out of Kemet. And he depicted actually Osiris. Moving forward, we all know that Egypt had used the snake in very many forms and fashions throughout their civilization. This is actually an ancient game that they would play similar to Mancala, where it's a counting game. And that also looks a lot like the great clock of the Mayan calendar, right? It's almost the exact same type of scale, so to speak. In addition to that, they did have what we currently know as snake charmers. What these guys would do is actually amazing. They would actually, you know, sync their body up to the energy of the snake, essentially being one with the snake. They would hypnotize the snake and, you know, put on a spectacle for performance. But actually what they're doing is harmonizing their body's energy with that of the snake. And so the snake more or less falls asleep. Like, that guy is not scared. There is no fear in that man's face. Still very calm, and actually that snake is kissing him on his third eye, which is very significant because we know it represents enlightenment, divineness, sight, in the land of the blind. This is why the pharaohs were buried in sarcophagus with a snake emerging from their third eye. Again, go back to the other descriptions and other civilizations out of China, out of India, Hindu culture. It represented enlightenment, divineness, and one with the higher God. Right? Speaking more on the Naga civilization, these were essentially the leaders of the empire, the high priests, so to speak. Real quick, I forgot about this, but they would actually they knew math, right? They built the atomic chart. And they would kind of make decisions of their empire, with regards to probability and mathematics. And, when you roll dice and you get 2 1s back to back, that's called snake eyes. That's because that was a holy number for them. It didn't occur that much, but when it came, it was like the gods were speaking. And so it was prominent in their decision-making process. But this is actually where the metaphor comes from. In addition to that, you'll notice that this is a Naga snake, or also cobra. It's a hooded serpent. This was a mystical, a magical society, so they oftentimes wore hoods and cloaks to mimic that of the serpent. Again, this is why the Egyptian was buried, the pharaoh was buried adorned in gold, because that resembled what the snake looked like, right? Even the beard represented the body, the underbelly of the snake. So we can see that this was very prominent in ancient Egyptian culture. This is another depiction of Osiris and Isis, right? And this was an actual carving, from those times. This talks more about the snake. One thing they talk about is the snake was the guardian, kind of like the conductor running the train, from this life into the afterworld. One thing you have to remember, a snake can both live above ground and underground and in water. And for esoteric members out there, we understand that the water is oftentimes the boundary between one world and another, because essentially here on Earth, we have locations in the world where humans have never been, humans have never populated, because they're so far underwater. It's literally in a different world to us. The Mariana Trench is one of these places where fire meets water, essentially an underground volcano, as low as the mountains are high, right? So this talks about the 12 cobras would blast fiery breaths to illuminate the paths of the underworld for the deceased. Again, they had the sight, they knew where they were going, and they were offering safe passageway, for the travelers to the next world, right? Another big part was the process of transformation and renewal, because the cobra essentially would be able to shed its skin and emerge renewed, essentially being born again. Although both Egyptian goddesses and gods wear cobras as a part of their headdresses, goddesses have the cobra form. In fact, the cobra hieroglyph, it was also used as a determinative when writing the names of goddesses or priestess. So anytime you saw a snake, that meant it was a woman. Sound like R. Kelly, that one song, "Move Your Body Like a Snake, Mama."
Here it comes. Exclusive new mix. Let's go.
So yeah, there you go. Now you know where it come from. Cobra goddesses are numerous in Egypt. The most prominent is the green one, Wadjet. She is the deity of the Lower Egypt and the two ladies who represent the two lands of Egypt. The harvest goddess is also one that they speak about as well. However, down here is when they talk about Isis, right? And that's who we discussed very briefly over here, right? And she was essentially the cobra goddess. Isis, and in her earlier depiction, Isis could be shown holding a cobra or a cobra wrapped around her arm. In the Greco-Roman period, a cobra-formed Isis is paired with her Greco-Egyptian consort Serapis, sometimes Osiris. So this guy became Serapis, right? Kermit became Serapis, basically, right? And they changed the names. Household serpents form the name, well, to be the messenger. Isis is also associated with the cobra in one of her most famous myths. They talk about how she was the snake. Let me see. Have you ever handled a serpent, felt it coil around your wrists or up your arms, exploring it with its flickering tongue? If you have touched the beauty of Isis in one of her most compelling and awe-striking forms, right? And so Isis was very prominent in the Egyptian culture. She was basically the mother deity, and she's also seen nursing her child Horus. Yeah, future king, mother of the future king Horus. Jordan Maxwell talks a lot about this.
I believe that within each one of us is the ability to pursue spiritual high places within each one of us. Unfortunately, we've had that drummed out of us by our masters who perceive that they are the masters of our destiny. But I believe that the earth was created by a higher form of life than that which presents itself to lead us today. We don't have political leaders. We have misleaders.
That looks very similar to the mother and child, Virgin Mary and Jesus. And this is what the puppets have turned this into, right? We go from cobras, divine goddess worship, to blatant destruction, death, and disregard for humanity. That's what Isis is nowadays, and this is a depiction of it. The snake binding Syria and Iraq, and, the great powers that be coming in and cutting it off, right? Isis, right? This, again, is the word magic. This is what it used to be. Enlightenment, power, divineness, understanding, recognition, one with the higher self, right? This is what it's become. So we are indeed filing a claim, but this is what we recognize. The truth has since been compromised. And that is the point of this video, to let you know that what you hear from the powers that be, especially when they have a wreath, is no longer the truth. Times have changed, histories have been rewritten, and certain understandings have been intentionally left out, all to your ignorance, all to your personal demise. And this is where I think it started, because if you think about, how did the snake become bad? What happened? How did we go wrong? You know what I'm saying? Isis was a snake. King Tut was buried, with the cobra on his head. What happened? This happened. One group of people took over. They rewrote the history, and they built an entire empire on a lie. Apep, or Apophis, Apepi, ancient Greek, remember that, ancient Greek, whenever it has a translation right there, that means they probably invented it, was the ancient Egyptian deity, don't believe that, was the converted Egyptian deity who embodied chaos, because we know the ancient Egyptians, along with the rest of the free world, adorned snakes, serpents. They understood them, and they were essentially deified as heavenly bodies, right? But now it represents chaos and was thus the opponent of light. You live in the darkness, right? The opponent of light, thus appearing as a giant serpent, right? So there you go. And this was the god. This was like the first time I think they introduced a god representing the snake as the devil, right? And of course, they make little stories, to make it work, and pass the fable on to the next group of sheeple. And now, to enforce it through mass indoctrination, this is what you get. 10 most deadliest snakes in the world. These guys will kill you. Fear is very common in the world of mythology and the world of misunderstanding. And therefore is no longer an excuse for personal ignorance or bias. The truth is out there, right? And knowledge will seek you as long as you start seeking it. Another interpretation of this symbol, probably much more well-known, is the caduceus, the staff of Hermes. This goes to Greek mythology, Hermes Trismegistus, in Greco-Egyptian mythology. Before that, I believe it was Thoth, T-O-T-H, the little bird head. And after, it became Hermes, which is also who, when you talk about the stars, but Mercury. We will get to Mercury. And as is fitting when it comes to duality, it is very suitable for not only us to know the negative, but also the positive when talking about the snake and how it was perceived, but most importantly, how it was revered in ancient cultures. This is Quetzalcoatl. He is also known as the feathered serpent. He was the deity, the most high of Mesoamerican culture. This was his land, right? Quetzalcoatl, one of the great pyramids that were built in ancient Mexico is Chichen Itza. The Mayan ruins, this is the serpent pyramid, the plumed serpent. And this actually, the way it's built is pretty amazing on, I think, the equinoxes. This thing casts shadows up the stairs to where the humps on its side, it actually looks like a snake is moving up and down the pyramid with respect to the way the sun is positioned in the sky. One thing to note is that flying reptile boundary maker between earth and sky. And then as time evolved, civilizations evolved, they changed their interpretation, but the snake symbol stayed the same. This is the Naga. They were deities, semi-divine, half-race, half-human serpents that resided here in the netherworld, can occasionally take human form. Essentially, this is what they say we got now, but I assure you, they are not walking the path that the Nagas walk. The Nagas were a very enlightened people. The mythological serpent race took form as cobras, can also be found in Hindu iconography. Remember, we talked about that with Vishnu. The Nagas are described as powerful, splendid, wonderful, proud, semi-divine race that can assume either their form as human, partial human, or whole serpent. Their domain is in the enchanted underworld, the underworld filled with gems, gold, and earthly treasures. They are also associated with what? Bodies of water. Do you see how this is all coming together? Nagas and serpents, right? And this is where basically we find ourselves in present day. The word Naga means serpent. The word Naga stands for one who is wise. In China, the Naga is given the form of the dragon and has direct association with the empire and is what known as the son of heaven. How did we get so backwards? While in Egypt, it's known as King Initiate. In Western traditions, we find the same ubiquity for the Naga or the serpent. One simple example is in ancient Greek, the goddess Athena. She is known as a warrior goddess as well and the goddess of wisdom. Her symbol being what? The serpent displayed on her shield. I didn't even know that. I just knew she was the goddess of light and math and justice and law. Look at that. Where's her shield? There you go right there. Don't nobody ever look at the shield. Right? She was the serpent goddess. Medusa. Right there on the shield. Dark-skinned Medusa too. Make no mistake about it. Naga is one of a handful of rare words surviving the loss of the first universal language. In Buddhism, wisdom has always been tied symbolically to the symbol of the serpent. In Western tradition, it can be found as used by the Christ in the Gospel of Saint Matthew 10:16. Be ye therefore wise as serpent and harmless as doves. So there you go. In addition to that, the pyramid, this is a quick overlay of the pyramid, the serpent pyramid that we talked about in Mexico. This is a quick walkthrough. Again, it was associated with the god Quetzalcoatl and also the god Kukulkan. Notice the word magic that these puppets have used over the course of century to make everything backwards. When I say Kukulkan, what's the first thing you think of? KKK, right? But this was actually one of the most powerful deities of that civilization, right? In so much that they inspired the building of a pyramid still standing today. Let me ask you one question. Do you think the fabricated landscapes of any downtown major metropolitan area will stand more than 300 years, let alone 5,000? These are the questions you need to start asking yourself. And this is exactly why I'm doing this video. We'll get to Mercury in a minute. Angkor Wat. What does that look like? And this, I think, is the oldest rendition of the serpent being destroyed. And this is why I put it in this presentation, because when you think of Angkor Wat, just say it, Angkor Wat. What does an anchor do? It sinks you to the bottom of that ocean. What is a watt? It is a unit storage value of your energy. Electricity flows, it's measured in watts. So basically, this is the sunken place for all your energy. And guess what? The picture shows the king who built this. I don't want to mess up his last name. Probably can't even pronounce it right. He's actually holding a dead snake. Believe it or not. Right here. As you can see from the image, he is elegantly seated on his throne. Typical Indian way of sitting, portrayed with beautiful jewelry. He's wearing bracelets and chains around his waist. Anchor chains maybe. And he's holding in his right hand an object believed to be a dead snake. Right? And I just put this in here because it's time for people to actually start understanding what words really mean and understanding what symbols may mean. Right? The snake has been used to convey energy. And this guy, Angkor Wat, is sinking the energy to the bottom of the ocean, never to be found again. Sounds a lot like what? Maritime Admiralty law. And by the way, when you go and watch Ocean's 11, which I just did, not even 3 days ago, but they actually have a scene, you probably won't even remember it, when the first guy, Danny, goes and talks to Frank Catton. Here you go. Look at that. Look at that. We got it. Let's see if we can pull this up and make it big. I can't believe I found it. Here we go, right here. Check this out. Nobody read the newspaper. People don't read the news, right? This guy, Terry Benedict, what does that say? What kind of casino is he building? The evil guy? Angkor Wat Casino. Right there. Angkor Wat Casino. And that's the bad guy. So understand the symbology and some of the history tied to these symbols that are presently misunderstood by 99% of the global population, right? In addition to that, Vishnu, the statue, the god, is oftentimes depicted under snakes, right? So apparently back then, it wasn't that bad. Or else this guy, who's, the Most High, wouldn't be protected by them. They got his back, literally, right? Protecting him from the world. Sounds a lot like Mowgli, tied up in that tree, listening to the snake. And also notice when he went to the snake, he was riding what? On the water, right? So we have snakes, we have knowledge, we have water. This is a very important symbol, the Ouroboros, reminiscent of the snake eating its own tail, which is representative of life, birth, creation, infinity, time passing, but life always preserving itself, right? And you can, look this up on your own, but it's one of the oldest symbols, especially in alchemy and Gnosticism, actually manipulating the physical properties of energy here on Earth to create something that did not exist before. That's more or less what those two deal with, right? So you have 8 as the snake eating itself, right? 8. The snake ate itself. This forms infinity, right? And I told you we would get to Mercury. Here it is right here. This is Mercury holding the caduceus staff. This is Greek mythology. Again, you have the exact same symbol, right? Mercury is holding the caduceus staff. What was he the god of? He was the god of financial gain, commerce, and communication, right? What does Bitcoin deal with? Financial gain, commerce, and communication. Do you understand how all this is tied together by this puppet standing on a stage in front of a national audience and literally telling them what we're dealing with? And guess what else Mercury deals with? We already talked about the snake, we talked about the number 8, we talked about the staff, but the orbit of Mercury itself is 88 days. How many days does it take to get around the sun? 88. Do you think that is a mistake? It is not. And when you look up the path of Mercury as it is today, this is Mercury down here in the lower right now. What day is today? 3/24. Right? This is the day that they released the news. Interesting enough, the moon is on the edge of Pisces and Aries. That's water. We talk about water is energy. Energy is the current of the sea. It literally aligns to everything we discussed on this channel before. You do have, almost a 3-way line, the earth, the sun, and the moon, all aligned. Right now we're in water. So Mercury and water is basically like a water sign. We're talking about energy. We're talking about water. We're talking about current of the sea. This is another interpretation of the symbol. The staff of Moses is mentioned in the Bible, right? It was used to produce what? Water. And transformed into a snake and parted the Red Sea, right? So again, we have water, we have the snake, and we have the staff, all tied together. Water, energy, current of the sea, currency, money, snake, representative of many, many things. This, I think, is the most prevalent as it ties water and the serpent together. Energy manifests itself through vibration, through polarity, through the sine wave. What does the snake represent? Sin. Do you think that is an accident? The ancient and all civilizations throughout were thoroughly trained of that and portrayed energy or vibration often as a snake. The snake moving along the ground or through water, in fact, produces a perfect sine wave. So the snake is the perfect symbol around the universe for unity becoming duality, right? This is big, people. If you actually watch a snake swim in water, the ripples that it forms is a perfect harmonic pattern. Again, talking about the reptile skin, repetition of tiles, fractals. We talk about that a lot on this channel. The sine wave, right? Positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. Duality existing within itself. This is what we do with the boss method. We say, is it good or bad? Should I buy it or sell it? Is it going up or going down? Just make it polar. Make it very easy to yourself, right? In addition to that, you have this sine wave, which I think corresponds greatly with what this puppet is actually saying behind the scenes. And that is that we are indeed running to the end of the empire currently known as the British US Empire, right? Also notice, people don't realize this, but after it came from Rome, right? It went to German Roman. People don't even realize it. They think Germany just popped up out of nowhere. Germany ran the world for a very, very, very long time. And then they handed it off, to those puppets in that castle. Gave her a big hat and said, wave to the peasants. And this goes all the way back to Egypt, probably about 5,000 years ago, all the way through, right? So in 2011, this is why they said the world was ending in 2012. Their world was ending, not ours. That's when we hit the crest of this curve, and we're basically on the downfall. Probably for the next 50 to 100 years, they'll systematically tear this thing down and build a new one. What's the plan to build the new one? This is it. The digital dollar project. Oh, by the way, what do those waves look like? Right there in the middle. Again, we go back talking about the snake. This is, the dissipation of energy that they're controlling through the digital dollar. It's just a visual representation of it. And this is real. This website just popped up out of nowhere, seemed to be aligned perfectly with the words spoken by this puppet. And they have it on a nice little website, leading the discussion on a U.S. central bank digital currency. The Digital Dollar Project is a partnership between Accenture and the Digital Dollar Foundation. I'll do more research on both of these. I just made this video to talk about the esoteric meaning of the serpent, and a lot of unspoken knowledge that people need to be familiar with, when decoding what these puppets are saying. But we'll get back to the digital dollar and Accenture on another show. The purpose of this project is to encourage research and public discussion on the digital dollar to support the public sector, right? And this is brand new. They don't have much on here. But one thing that is of note is that you should no longer be ignorant to these symbols, right? If you just go through life with the same interpretation of a symbol that was told to you, with the snake, Adam and Eve, and all you think is, oh my God, the snake is evil, it's because of the snake that our world is so horrible. No, actually, it's probably because of you, because you haven't opened your mind to teach yourself of how this symbol has been interpreted throughout the course of history. You just show up at church, once a year, Easter service. I tell you what, they packed in there, But yet you don't see the symbols that are literally right in front of your face. The sine wave, the fractal, the scales of the reptile controlled through the dollar, through currency, the current of the sea, eerily reminiscent of the sine waves produced by the snake, right? And so I called this video Secrets of the Serpent, not because, it's an unspoken truth, but I think many people need to become aware of these symbols and of the history of these symbols and the uses of these symbols. Secrets of the Serpent, one side represents knowledge, right? Again, go back to the beginning of this episode when I showed you what this actually looked like, right? He came riding on water. He rode on water to get to that snake. Do you think that is a mistake? Moses parted the Red Sea with a snake and a staff, right? Brahma was protected by the snake. And they form a perfect sine wave that can be used over the course of history to explain and describe when empires are born and when empires fall. Right? So there you go. That didn't take nearly as long as I thought. We covered a lot. Hopefully, we were able to make sense of some of this for you guys. The biggest thing is to know that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Oftentimes, you don't need the sight on which that was given to you, but you need to develop your own sight inside yourself. You need to know who you are in this world. You need to know where you fit in, and you need to know what the world is doing around you. And that does involve turning off the TV. That does involve not keeping up with the Kardashians. That does involve not paying attention to all the distractions around you, because just by paying attention to it, you are indeed engaging in a transaction, one that you will never get back, right? This is a powerful symbol. And I hope I broke it down good enough for you guys. If you appreciate this information, go ahead and subscribe, turn the notifications on. A lot of this stuff I don't see too many other YouTube crypto people talking about, but it most certainly does not mean it's not relevant, right? Click your bell. I do videos every day, especially during this downtrodden period. I'm just trying to get information out to the people. You know what I'm saying? And then also recognize that symbols can be interpreted many, many, many different ways. But this is exactly why we have a Telegram group. The link is right there in the description. It's called the #1 Bitcoin group in the world. 355 members, growing strong every day. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Come on in. The doors are always open. And then if you want to join some of our VIP premium communities, you can do so on bossofbitcoin.com. This is where I give detailed analysis and updates, live market updates for you guys to make money on every swing in the market. This is a very active group, going 24 hours a day. We have community members all over the world. The profit package and the boss alert messages are both available for you. And so in closing, remember that everything is energy. Energy is everything. And it's up to you to determine how you will allow such said symbols to manifest in your world. You are the center of your own world, and that is a system of design. But once you allow yourself to reconnect with the higher self, once you seek knowledge, then guess what? Knowledge seeks you. And so I expect this video to reach those it is intended to reach. I do not expect it to reach everyone, but if it does reach you, know that nothing happens on accident. The universe may work in mysterious ways, but it certainly does not make mistakes. So with that being said, everybody, it's that time of the day. Signing out. Folks, boy BK, no matter where you stay. Brazil to Bay, California, all the way back out through Germany. Good night, good morning, and good day. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time. As I said previously, you know what I'm saying? Hit that subscribe button. You know what I'm saying? Join the money team. Leave me a comment on this video if you appreciate this esoteric knowledge, some of this occult symbology. Show me some love in the comments. Let me know what you think. If you want to see more of it, I got more to come. Or we could just jump on some charts, you know what I'm saying, and do some sine wave frequencies on the chart, the Fibonacci, and you know, show you what's happening in the market. Let me know what you think. Do that for me if you appreciate mine. Till we meet again, stay cryptic, y'all.
And consequently, we cannot depend on other men. When the Bible expressly says, put not your trust in earthly man, in whom there is no salvation. So anytime you start thinking in terms of the government as there to help you and to take care of you, you better do your homework and find out that's only there for one reason, to control you, for your masters. We are in the living right now, I believe, in Berlin, 1939-40. As far as I'm concerned, we need to begin to wake up and find out what freedom is all about and start asking some very serious questions about who is leading us and where are they taking the human family. We are in serious trouble on this earth, and the people who are guiding the destiny of this world are profoundly evil. Their agenda is so profoundly evil, most men are not even able to perceive it. But go back into history a little bit, into 1944, 1945, and look at the concentration camps. Look at the total devastation of human liberty and freedom foisted on the people of Germany and the rest of Europe, but ultimately on the whole world. And you will begin to realize what's coming for America.
Peace.
Like a boss.
Arms.
Like